Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Lisa Mateo. Here are the top stories we're following today.
Lisa, we begin in Washington, D.C., where President Trump's massive tax and spending cut bill has taken its first big step on Capitol Hill. It is moving on to the Senate after the mix of tax breaks and cuts to social programs passed the House by the thinnest of margins. House Speaker Mike Johnson says he's confident it's going to get done.
We stand ready to continue our work together to deliver on the one big, beautiful bill, as President Trump named it himself. We're going to send that to his desk. We're going to get it there by Independence Day on July 4th, and we are going to celebrate a new golden age in America.
But before that happens, for House Speaker Mike Johnson, lawmakers may have to satisfy bond investors. The yield on 30-year treasuries is back above 5% on concerns the bill will add to the nation's already ballooning deficit. Seema Shah is Chief Global Strategist at Principal Asset Management.
Increasingly, it feels like this administration is going to have to confront the problems because the bond market has lost patience and is really going to force the issue through to make sure that there is some realization that continuing to expand its deficit, its debt numbers indefinitely, is simply not something which can continue.
Seema Shah with Principal Asset. Now, the Trump administration argues the bill will boost business sentiment and unleash economic growth, but higher Treasury yields could make it more expensive to borrow and pile on even more to the government's debt.
Nathan, now the latest on another major story in the nation's capital, the killing of two Israeli embassy staffers at a Jewish museum. The suspect, 31-year-old Elias Rodriguez, made his first court appearance on 2 counts of murder of foreign officials and firearms charges. He didn't enter a plea, but interim U.S. Attorney for D.C., Jeanine Pirro, says the case is being investigated as a hate crime and an act of terrorism.
This is the kind of case that picks at old sores and old scars, because these kinds of cases remind us of what has happened in the past that we can never and must never forget.
Interim U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro says the case is eligible for the death penalty, but prosecutors haven't said whether they'll pursue it. Israel's ambassador says the victims, Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram, were about to be engaged in Jerusalem next week. Charging documents say the suspect told police he did it for Palestine. He's been ordered to remain in custody until next hearing on June 18th.
And Lisa, the Trump administration is making another big move against Harvard, revoking the university's ability to enroll international students. It says thousands of current students now have to transfer to other schools or leave the country. The Department of Homeland Security says Harvard has created an unsafe campus environment by allowing anti-American, pro-terrorist agitators to assault Jewish students on campus. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers is Harvard's president emeritus.
This is vicious. It is illegal. It is unwise. And it is very damaging. Why does it make any sense at all to stop 6,000 enormously talented young people who want to come to the United States to study from having that opportunity?
Former Harvard President Larry Summers told Bloomberg, quote, "This is the stuff of tyranny." The Homeland Security Department also accuses the university of coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party, saying it hosted and trained members of a Chinese paramilitary group as recently as last year.
Well, meanwhile, Columbia University also under continued scrutiny by the Trump administration. A government inquiry, it's found the Ivy League school violated federal civil rights law by acting with, quote, deliberate indifference toward the harassment of its Jewish students. Columbia has stated that it is, quote, deeply committed to combating antisemitism and all forms of harassment and discrimination on our campus.
All right, let's turn to markets now, Lisa. Stocks are on track for their worst week in more than a month, and bond markets, as we said, are reflecting investor concerns about ballooning U.S. debt and deficits. Kathy Jones is Chief Fixed Income Strategist at Schwab Center for Financial Research.
The initial catalyst, or the immediate catalyst, was the budget bill, which was kind of the final straw for the market, saying, okay, there's really no meaningful progress going to be made anytime soon on reducing the deficit.
Kathy Jones of Schwab notes 30-year bond yields this week reached a peak of 5.15%. That approached levels last seen in 2007. This morning, the long bond is yielding 5.02%.
Well, a worldwide survey of businesses shows those most worried about tariffs are in the U.S. Bloomberg's John Tucker following that story. Good morning.
Good morning, Lisa. 5,700 international firms in 13 countries were surveyed by HSBC. About a quarter of U.S. companies say they're forecasting their revenues will be cut by more than half over the next couple of years because of the impact of the Trump tariffs on their supply chains. By contrast, Chinese businesses, they appear to be more optimistic, with only a quarter projecting an impact of 25% or more on revenues. Overall, HSBC found widespread concern about the tariffs. Vivek Ramachandran is head of global trade solutions at HSBC.
Everyone we've spoken to is planning to reshape their supply chains, look at new markets, or change their business model.
Well, 2/3 of the respondents say they had already experienced cost increases due to the tariffs and the trade uncertainty. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, John, thank you. And speaking of tariffs, stick with Bloomberg. We're going to have a conversation with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He'll be sitting down with Bloomberg's David Weston at our global headquarters in New York City. You can catch that conversation at 11:30 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Podcasts page on YouTube.
Well, Nathan, President Trump has initiated a phone call with the Prime Minister of Japan. This is just as Tokyo's top negotiator left for the U.S. for another round of trade talks. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, speaking through a translator, says the two had a 45-minute conversation.
We didn't discuss any details about tariffs. Japan's stance of seeking the removal of additional tariffs remains unchanged. The other side also made no specific mention of this matter.
The phone call between the two leaders was the first since early April, when the U.S. ramped up its tariff against nations around the world, including Japan.
Well, Lisa, top holders of President Trump's meme coin and other guests were greeted by protesters as they arrived for a dinner with the president at his golf club outside Washington last night. The gathering has faced criticism from Democrats who cited conflicts of interest and the potential of selling access to the president, particularly to people from foreign countries. Here's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
The president is attending it in his personal time. It is not a White House dinner. It's not taking place here at the White House.
As White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt, and at the dinner, President Trump gave a speech reiterating his pledge to make the U.S. the world's crypto capital.
All right, it's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. For that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Lisa. Millions of people are planning to travel by either planes, trains, or automobiles as we start the Memorial Day travel rush. How is the weather looking for holiday travel? Bloomberg meteorologist Craig Allen has the latest.
There will be gradual improvement with each passing day as we go into the holiday weekend, especially in and around New York City and points south. It'll take longer for some of the northern areas, like upstate New York or into New England from Boston on north, for it to gradually clear out and get a little bit better. But the trend is a better one overall, and we can expect temperatures to moderate too. By the time we get to Memorial Day itself, it should be back into the upper 60s to mid 70s.
Bloomberg meteorologist Craig Allen. The Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking and racketeering trial will resume next Tuesday. Yesterday, fellow rapper and actor Kid Cudi, whose real name is Scott Muscudi, took the witness stand. He testified about his relationship with Diddy's ex, Cassie Ventura, and violence that he says he was the victim of about 14 years ago. Cudi testified shortly after Combs found out he had been dating Ventura. Someone set his car on fire. Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges. The music agency Sound Talent Group says 3 of its employees died on the private plane that crashed into a San Diego neighborhood on Thursday. And that includes Dave Shapiro, the agency's co-founder. Shapiro is listed as the owner of the plane and has a pilot's license. 6 people were on that Cessna. It originated out of New Jersey's Teterboro Airport. The jet crashed into a neighborhood of U.S. Navy-owned housing in San Diego during foggy weather, igniting several homes and numerous vehicles parked on the street. This woman who lives there says the crash spilled jet fuel down the street.
And there's fire all in front of my house. I didn't know. I just kept hearing explosions, and the fire was up to right in front of my front door. So I'm trying to figure out how to escape with my kids.
Despite the destruction, officials say no one on the ground was killed. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg. Lisa.
Thank you, Michael. All right, right, it's time now for our Bloomberg Sports Update. For that, we bring in John Stashower. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Lisa. When we last saw the Knicks, they were suffering through the worst blown lead in an NBA playoff game in at least 27 years. There was a point in Game 1 with Indiana that the Knicks' win probability was said to be 99.7%, but it's the Pacers who won, bring a 1-0 lead to Game 2 tonight at the Garden. Here's the Knicks, Mikal Bridges.
So it's just like them last 5 minutes, and learning from it and just owning up to it and knowing what we got to do better. So it's not really crazy. Nothing to, obviously we want that game back, but, it's a 7-game series. So it's just come out, be better, and play hopefully and diminish next game.
Game 2 in the West, they gave Oklahoma City star Shai Gilgeous-Alexander his MVP award. Then he scored 38 points, led the Thunder to a 118-103 win over Minnesota for a 2-0 series lead. Florida Panthers appear on their way to a third straight Stanley Cup final with a chance to repeat as Cup champions. The Panthers won 5-0 at Carolina. Now go home up 2-0. Yankees and Rangers stadium matinee with Yankee rookie infielder Yorbit Vivas at the plate. 5th inning.
Vivas hits one deep to right field. Ball is gone. See ya. His first big league home run gives the Yankees a 1-0 lead.
Yes, Network, only run of the game. The Yanks' 30th win, 11th in the last 14, and now they get to play the Colorado Rockies, who are 8-42. Worst 50-game start to a season since 1895. The Louisville Colonels. The Rockies are on pace to lose 136 games, which would shatter the modern record set by the White Sox last year. They only lost 121. Mets and Dodgers start a series tonight at Citi Field. Red Sox and Orioles a day-night doubleheader at Fenway after last night's rain out. The Nationals won their 5th in a row, 8-7, 10 innings over Atlanta. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports, Lisa and Nathan.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I am Nathan Hager, and President Donald Trump's one big, beautiful tax and spending cut bill may be making progress on Capitol Hill, but it may have to run through the gauntlet of a bond market that's raising a lot more alarm bells about what the legislation could mean for the country's already big deficit. Ella Hoja is head of fixed income at Newton Investment Management.
The danger for now is that this fiscal phenomenon feeds on itself. If it's a global phenomenon and you're seeing yields at the long end go up, that should be somewhat of a concern, certainly for risky assets and certainly for policymakers as well, as they have to finance at much higher interest rates.
That's Ella Hoja of Newton Investment Management. For more, we're joined by Bloomberg News Global Business Editor Joshua Galou. And Josh, we do still have a 30-year yield above 5%. It had been as high as 5.15 before backing off. It gets your attention, but you got to wonder whether it gets Washington's attention. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, I think that the bond markets have been really clear about how they feel about this tax bill. You saw the Moody's downgrade last week, and the markets have responded as one would expect, frankly. This bill adds anywhere from, estimates range from about $2 to $2.5 trillion to more than $5 trillion to the deficit over the 10-year horizon that it legislates for. So the markets aren't happy, and this, honestly, it creates big problems for the economy when the country has to borrow at these high costs. It's a compounding problem. So we'll have to see what happens as the bill now moves to the Senate. The Senate wants even more tax breaks, and they're going to push for some of the business tax breaks that are set to phase out over the course of the bill's life to make those instead permanent, which would actually put more pressure on the borrowing. So we'll have to see what happens there. They're rushing it through as well, and this could, result in more cuts to programs like Medicaid, SNAP, the nutritional program for kids of low-income households, and some of the other provisions that could come up, like the state and local tax deduction that was so hardly fought in the House. So we'll have to see what comes out of there, but they're really trying to push it through to get it to Trump's desk by July 4th, which is an ambitious timeline.
Yeah, less than 2 months from now. And while the bond market may be trying to put pressure on senators, President Trump and the administration are putting even more pressure on Harvard University, now to pretty unprecedented levels in terms of their enrollment, Josh.
Indeed, this is a massive escalation of their policies toward higher education that they've been running towards elite schools for the past couple months. So yesterday, Homeland Security revoked Harvard's ability to enroll international students, and it also said that current students who are internationals would have to either transfer to a new school or lose their status. And it, of course, that's about a quarter of Harvard's population. This all stems from the administration's desire to crack down on what it's calling sort of lack of control to police anti-Semitism, and also other, diversity, equity, inclusion policies that it's pointed to over the course of the last few months. It's a very aggressive policy. It's something that is unprecedented, as you said. And Harvard, of course, is challenging them in court. And we'll have to see how that goes.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak, your morning podcast on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed by 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 92.9 in Boston, and nationwide on Sirius XM Channel 121.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, now with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto interfaces.
And don't forget to subscribe to Bloomberg News Now. It's the latest news whenever you want it in 5 minutes or less. Search Bloomberg News Now on your favorite podcast platform to stay informed all day long. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Lisa Mateo. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.